Love a Woman, a lamentable tale of things done long ago and ill done. The horror, the confusion, and the separation of the murderer from his comrades were all over before I came. There remained only on the barracks square the blood of man calling from the ground. The hot sun had dried it to a dusky gold-beater skin film, cracked lozenge-wise by the heat. And as the wind rose, each lozenge, rising a little, curled up at the edges as if it were a dumb tongue. Then a heavier gust blew away all downwind in grains of dark-colored dust. It was too hot to stand in the sunshine before breakfast. The men were in barracks, talking the matter over. A knot of soldiers' wives stood by one of the entrances to the married quarters, while inside a woman shrieked and raved with wicked, filthy words. A quiet, well-conducted sergeant had shot down, in broad daylight, just after early parade, one of his own corporals, had then returned to barracks and sat on the cot till the guard came for him. He would, therefore, in due time be handed over to the High Court for trial. Further, but this he could hardly have considered in his scheme of revenge, he would horribly upset my work, for the reporting of that trial would fall on me without a relief. What that trial would be like, I knew even to weariness. There would be the rifle carefully uncleaned, with the fouling marks about the breech and muzzle, to be sworn to by half a dozen superfluous privates. There would be heat, reeking heat, till the wet pencils slipped sideways between the fingers and the punka would swish, and the pleaders would jabber in the verandas, and his commanding officer would put in certificates to the prisoner's moral character, while the jury would pant and the summer uniforms of the witnesses would smell of dye and soaps, and some abject barrack sweeper would lose his head in cross-examination, and the young barrister, who always defended soldiers' cases for the credit that they never brought him, would say and do wonderful things, and would then quarrel with me because I had not reported him correctly. At last, for he surely would not be hanged, I might meet the prisoner again, ruling blank account forms in the central jail, and cheer him with the hopes of his being made a warder in the Andamans. The Indian Penal Code and its interpreters do not treat murder, under any provocation whatever, in a spirit of jest. Sergeant Rains would be very lucky indeed if he got off with 7 years, I thought. He had slept the night upon his wrongs, and killed his man at 20 yards before any talk was possible. That much I knew. Unless, therefore, the case was doctored a little, 7 years would be his least, and I fancied it was exceedingly well for Sergeant Rains that he had been liked by his company. That same evening, no day is so long as the day of a murder, I met Orthris with the dogs, and he plunged defiantly into the middle of the matter. "I'll be one of the witnesses," he said. "I was in the veranda when Mackie came along. He come from Mrs. Rains' quarters. Quigley Parsons and Trot, they was inside the veranda, so they couldn't have heard nothing. Sergeant Rains was in the veranda talking to me, and Mackie come along across the square, and he says, 'Well,' says he, 'have they pushed your helmet off yet, Sergeant?' he says. And at that, Rains catches his breath, and he says, 'My God, I can't stand this,' says he, and he picks up my rifle and shoots Mackie, see? But what were you doing with your rifle in the outer veranda an hour after parade?" "Cleaning her," said Orthris, with the sullen, brassy stare that always went with his choicer lies. He might well have said that he was dancing naked, for at no time did his rifle need hand or rag on her 20 minutes after parade. Still, the High Court would not know his routine. "Are you going to stick to that, on the book?" I asked. "Yes, like a bloomin' leech." "All right. I don't want to know any more. Only remember that Quigley, Parsons, and Trot couldn't have been where you say without hearing something, and there's nearly certain to be a barrack sweeper who was knocking about the square at that time. There always is. 'Twasn't the sweeper, it was the beastie. He's all right." Then I knew that there were going to be some spirited doctoring, and I felt sorry for the government advocate who would conduct the prosecution. When the trial came on, I pitied him more, for he was always quick to lose his temper, and made a personal matter of each lost cause. Rain's young barrister had for once put aside his unslaked and welling passion for alibis and insanity, had forsworn gymnastics and fireworks, and worked soberly for his client. Mercifully, the hot weather was yet young, and there had been no flagrant cases of barrack shootings up to the time, and the jury was a good one, even for an Indian jury, where 9 men out of 12 are accustomed to weighing evidence. Othra stood firm and was not shaken by any cross-examination. The one weak point in his tale, the presence of his rifle in the outer veranda, went unchallenged by civilian wisdom, though some of the witnesses could not help smiling. The government advocate called for the rope, contending throughout that the murder had been a deliberate one. Time had passed, he argued, for the reflection which comes so naturally to a man whose honor is lost. There was also the law, ever ready and anxious to right the wrongs of the common soldier, if, indeed, wrong had been done. But he doubted much whether there had been any sufficient wrong. Causeless suspicion, overlong brooded upon, had led, by his theory, to deliberate crime. But his attempts to minimize the motive failed. The most disconnected witness had known for weeks, the causes of the offence, and the prisoner, who naturally was the last of all to know, groaned in the dock while he listened. The one question that the trial circled round was whether Rains had fired under sudden and blinding provocation, given that very morning, and in the summing up it was clear that Othris's evidence told. He had contrived most artistically to suggest that he had personally hated the sergeant, who had come into the veranda to give him a talking to for insubordination. In a weak moment, the government advocates asked one question too many. "Begging your pardon, sir," Othris replied. "He was a-calling me a damn impudent little lawyer." The court shook. The jury brought it in a killing, but with every provocation and extenuation known to God or man, and the judge put his hand to his brow before giving sentence, and the Adam's apple in the prisoner's throat went up and down like mercury pumping before a cyclone. In consideration of all considerations, from his commanding officer certificate of good conduct to the sure loss of pension, service, and honor, the prisoner would get 2 years to be served in India, and there need be no demonstration in court. The government advocate scowled and picked up his papers. The guard wheeled with a clash, and the prisoner was relaxed to the secular arm and driven to the jail in a broken-down tickagari. His guard and some 10 or 12 military witnesses, being less important, were ordered to wait till what was officially called the cool of evening before marching back to cantonments. They gathered together in one of the deep red brick verandas of a disused lock-up and congratulated Othris, who bore his honors modestly. I sent my work into the office and joined them. Othris watched the government advocate driving off to lunch. "That's a nasty little bald-head little butcher, that is," he said. "Ease don't please me. Ease got a collie dog what do, though I'm sure I'm going up to Murray in a week. That dog'll bring 15 rupees anywheres." "You had better spend it in masses," said Terence, unbuckling his belt, for he had been on the prisoner's guard, standing helmeted and bolt upright for 3 long hours. "Not me," said Othris cheerfully. "God'll put it down to B Company barracks damages one of these days. You look strapped, Terence. "Faith, I'm not so young as I was. The guard mounties wear on the soles of the foot, and this," he sniffed contemptuously at the brick veranda, "is a hard setting as standing." "Wait a minute, I'll get the cushion out of my cart," I said. "Struth, softies." "We're going it gay," said Othris, as Terence dropped himself section by section on the leather cushions, saying prettily, "May ye never want a soft place wherever ye go, and a power to share it wid a friend. Another for yourself? That's good. Let me sit's long ways. Stanley, pass me a pipe. Ugh! Ain't that's another man gone all to pieces because of a woman. I must have been on 40 or 50 prisoner guards, first and last, and I hate it new every time." "Let's see, you were on Lozenge, Lancey's, Dugards, and Stebbins, that I can remember," I said. "Aye, and before that, scores of them," he answers with a worn smile. "'Tis better to die than to live for them, though. When Rains come out, he'll be changing his kit at the jail now. He'll think that too. He should have shot himself and the woman by rights and made a clean bill of 'em all. Now he's left the woman. She took tay wid Dina Shunday gone last, and he's left himself. Mackie's the lucky man. He's probably getting it hot where he is, I ventured, for I knew something of the dead corporal's record. Be sure of that, said Terence, spitting over the edge of the veranda. But what he'll get there is light marching orders of what he'll get when he got here if he lived. Surely not. He'd have gone on and forgotten, like the others. How do you know Mackie? Did you know Mackie well, sir? Said Terence. He was on the Patricia Guard of Honor last winter, and I went out shooting with him in the Ika for the day, and I found him a rather amusing man. Well, he'll have got shut of amusements except turning from one side to the other these few years to come. I knew Mackie, and I've seen too many to be mistook in the muster of one man. He might have gone on and forgotten, as you say, sir, but he was a man with an education, and he used it for his schemes, and the same education and talking, and all that made him able to do what he had a mind to do with a woman. That same would turn back again in the long run to tear him alive. I can't to say that I mean to say because I don't know how, but Mackie was the same spit of a living image of a man that I saw march the same march all but, and 'twas worse for him that he did not come by Mackie Ind. Wait while I remember now. 'Twas when I was back in the Black Tyrone, and he was drafted us from Portsmouth, and of what his misbegotten name? Larry Ty it was, and one of the daft said he was a gentleman ranker, and Laranky took and 3 parts killed him for saying so, and he was a big man, and a strong man, and a handsome man, and that tells heavy in practice with some women, but taking them by the large, not wid all. Yet 'twas wid all that Larry dealt, all for he could put the cummerth on the woman that trod the green earth of God, and he knew it. Like Mackie, that's roasting now. He knew it, and never did he put the cummerth on any woman save and except for the black shame. 'Tis not me that should be talking, dear knows, but the most of my misalliances were for pure deviltry, and mighty sorry I might have been when harm came, and time again with a girl, and a woman too, for the matter of that, when I have seen by the eyes of her that I was making more trouble than I talked, I'd have held off and let them be for the sake of the mother that bore me. But Larry, I'm thinking he was suckled by a she-devil, for he never let one go that came nigh to listen to him. 'Twas his business, as if it might have been singly go. He was a good soldier too. Now there was the colonel's governess, and he a private too, that was never known in the barracks, and one of the major's maids, and she was promised to a man, and of some more outside. Of what it was amongst us we'll never know till judgment day. 'Twas the nature of the best to put the cometh on the best of them, not the prettiest by any manner of means, but the likes of such woman as you could lay your hand on the book and swear there was never thought of foolishness in. And for that the very reason, mark you, he was never caught. He came close to it once or twice, but caught he never was, and that cost him more than in the end than in the beginning. He talked to me more than most, because he told me, barring the accident of my education, I'd have been the same kind of devil he was, and is like it. And is ut like, he said he would say, holding his head high, is ut like that I'd never be thrapped. For of what am I when all's said and done, he says. A damned private, says he, and is ut like, think you them I know would be content with a private like me? Number 10,407, he says, grinning. I knew by the turn of his speech when he was not talking care to talk roughshod that he was a gentleman ranker. I do not understand at all, I says, but I know, says I, that the devil looks out of your eyes, and I have no share with you. A little fun by the way of amusement where 'twill do no harm, Larry, is right and fair, But I am mistook, if 'tis any amusement to you, I says. You're muss mistook, he says, and I counsel you not to judge your betters. My betters, I says. God help you, Larry, there's no better in this. 'Tis all bad, as ye will find out yourself. You're not like me, he says, tossing his head. Praise the saints, I am not, I says. For what I have done been cruel. For what for what I have done and been cruel sorry for. For when your time comes, says I, you'll remember what I say.